Hello, welcome to the 37-week educational information visit video. At this visit, we really like to talk about labor and birthing at the birth center and making sure that everyone's on the same page. One of the things that people ask a lot about, or what we want to talk to families about, is when to call the midwife or page us during your labor. A few different kind of more objective numbers. If you are a first-time family, we talk about, you may have heard the 511 and the 311 as numbers of when to call us. So 511 is talking about contraction timing, and we time contractions from the beginning of one contraction to the beginning of the next. So when your contractions are 5 minutes apart and they last for about a minute, for about an hour, that's usually a good time to touch base with your midwife. Of course, I always tell families they are welcome to call sooner if they have any questions at all. But at that 511, if you haven't contacted us sooner, it's a good time to call us and let us know. At this point, we'll ask you some questions about things like, where are you experiencing the contractions? When's the last time you ate or drank? Are you having any bloody show or leaking fluid? And we'll just talk with you a little bit more about just what's been happening up until this point. The 311, or when contractions are roughly or 3 minutes apart or less, lasting about a minute for an hour, is when we usually have you come to the birth center. At this point, when we have you come in, we usually will do a check-in to see how is baby sounding, what's your vitals. We usually check your cervix. And with this whole picture, we find out, along with your contractions, is it a good time to be at the birth center? Sometimes when we do this check-in, it's still time to labor longer at home and the midwife will talk with you. And other times it is here to stay at the birth center for your labor. And we, of course, will talk to you more in that moment. But the other piece I talk about is kind of what's normal between that 511 and 311 for a first-time family. I always tell people that sometimes I get that 511 call at maybe, let's say, 8 o'clock at night, and then it's just within a few hours that things have progressed more quickly and families are at that 311 time. I also say, though, it's very, very normal to have where I get a page that people are 511 maybe at 8 o'clock in the evening, and I maybe don't hear from them throughout the evening or night, and they're actually calling the next day with contractions every 311 or 3 minutes apart. And I say that just to say that it is normal that sometimes that phase of labor can take a while. And so we want families to know that labor can look different for everybody, but really just to expect that sometimes that time of labor can be a decent amount of time. The other piece that we like you to call us for is if your water breaks. It's not very often that your water breaks prior to labor, but that can happen. So if you do feel a gush of fluid, or sometimes there can be like a leak in your bag where it's not going to be this big gush, but rather you're noticing a fairly consistent trickle watery fluid, we know that extra discharge is normal in pregnancy, especially towards the end, and it can be pretty viscous or fluidy. But if it's really clear and really looks like that water or watery fluid that might be tinged a different color, then we really do want to hear from you, especially if you're seeing that, consistently, or if you really feel like it's that watery type fluid, and then we can assess more what you're experiencing about whether or not it would be a good idea for you to come in. So at that point, feel free to give us a call if you have any concerns about leaking fluid, contraction pattern. Bloody show is very normal to have in earlier phases of labor, but if you're concerned about vaginal bleeding, always feel free to give us a call to talk more about that. And then when your midwife and you talk, you will figure out an individual plan of when to come into the birth center and check. If you've had a baby before, our timing looks a little bit different just because things can sometimes turn a quicker corner. And so we ask for families to call us sooner than that 5 minutes apart mark to kind of touch base. This one's a little bit harder because there's not as much of a black and white answer for if you've had babies before. But if you have, then if your contractions are between 5 and 10 minutes apart, they have a consistent pattern and you feel like this is different than maybe some other contractions you've been having, give a call and then we can touch base with where things are at. Otherwise, we usually have you come to the birth center around that 4 to 6 minute, 5 minute mark, especially if they have length to those contractions or if the intensity is picking up. But sometimes I have people call me and say, Rachel, my contractions are 5 minutes apart, but they're only lasting 20 seconds. And so at those times, we'll talk through about, how they're feeling and when and if they should come into labor. So biggest thing is, you know, giving us a call or a heads up when you think things might be happening, or if your water breaks, like I said, then we'll talk. All right, if you have any information or questions or further needs from after watching this video, please don't hesitate to give us a call anytime. Thank you.